What's up, guys? It's Mr. Javid, and today we are back for another episode of On the Contrary, and we're continuing the kind of interview style. The previous episodes, I've interviewed more well-known names, but as the podcast begins to evolve, and it's really just doing its own thing, now we're going to be moving into the territory of talking about potentially what's to come. And so today I have a guest. He goes by Danny, and he reached out to me on Discord. Really, I think it may have been yesterday. It wasn't long ago. Um,
Yeah, it
and
was a day or two ago.
yeah, if that. And he was basically had this really cool concept that I'm gonna let him go into because I definitely butcher it. Um, but it's essentially kind of like auto team building for you. Um, but yeah, Danny, feel free to go ahead, introduce yourself to the people, and let them know what you got in store for the community.
All right, so thanks for that introduction. It's a pleasure to be on. My name's Danny, and I am a grad student researcher in computer science, and I recently submitted a paper to an AI conference. It's currently under review, and the whole premise of it is competitive Pokemon and analyzing it from more of a team building perspective because well, for a little background, as I was explaining to Jam when I was messaging him before coming on, a lot of the research environment surrounding Pokemon as a game is either based on Pokemon Go, which is really kind of irrelevant to our community,
Right, right,
but and a lot of the more competitive papers are all about choosing plays, right? So like just you're in a game and you're on turn one and the AI needs to choose one of your four moves or one of your five other Pokemon to switch to.
hmm
And I figure the reason a lot of papers kind of start there is because in that regard, Pokemon is really similar to like chess,
hmm
which has had a lot of AI research done on it, where like you have a certain amount of pieces and not every piece has the same moves available. And it's a lot of strategic positioning, a lot of the stuff that you bring up in your Showdown lives.
hmm
So, but the thing that kind of bugged me as I was reading these papers is that they all kind of assume that the teams that they're playing with are good,
hmm
which from my experience is not the case from my
Right,
experience team building.
right.
So they usually have like, two a human versus an AI, and both players are using teams from like a small pool of five so that you can run an experiment more effectively.
Right. To
But
control
like
and
that's
whatnot.
not really, yeah, but that's not like what Pokemon is. Like you watch a tournament match, which is three games, you're seeing six different teams. So
hmm
like just in one round of a tournament, you're probably seeing more teams than this entire experiment did.
hmm
So I kind of wanted to break down some of the more strategic team building elements of Pokemon and kind of attack those in a different way than people are doing so now.
hmm Okay. And so from that observation, that led you into what you're talking about or what actually you submitted. And so, could you give them a bit of insight as to how you've decided, this is how I want to not necessarily solve, but maybe solve, but more so at least take a step forward in addressing what you noticed.
So yeah, so this all started, I was taking a class for it was called Semantic Web, where like involved in a lot of like scraping information off of like online resources
Mm-hmm.
and to kind of like make inferences based on them. So like the stuff that's kind of behind like Siri, when you say like, oh, like, hey Siri, is there a good Italian restaurant nearby?
Mm-hmm.
Like where it takes every word, and then not only does it recognize the word, it also recognizes what you mean
Mm-hmm.
by those words. And so we kind of had to do a project in that class where we had to find a data domain that has like semantic content involved. And I thought,
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon came immediately to mind, where there's rules that don't change and also rules that do. So like and then we organize the data into an ontology, which is just a variation of a database that
Mm-hmm.
stores both data and logic. And I guess like my simple explanation of what an ontology does is it stores concepts. It stores concepts, properties, and objects.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you have, so like let's take Urshifu.
Mm-hmm.
So like the species Urshifu is a concept. So like every Urshifu will be weak to fairy. Every Urshifu will be a dark type and will get stabbed from dark type attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Every Urshifu has oh geez, what's its base speed? Because not every Urshifu
322.
has a 322.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't
So
know base
yeah,
speeds off the top of my head, but I know the max.
yeah.
That's just how I remembered.
But
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So every Urshifu's max speed is 322.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's adamant or jolly might change it a little bit, but the base speed is the same.
Right.
But so that's the concept of Urshifu. And then the professor would always kind of like, he'd point at the expo marker in his hand and would be like, is this a marker or is this an instance of a marker? Like in some weird, like to kind of get you to really think in like the concept versus individual frame of mind. So if we're running two separate teams, I have a bandit Urshifu, you have a scarf Urshifu, even though they're the same concept, the actual Pokemon that we're using and its relation to my team, its relation to how it breaks through your team,
Mm-hmm.
those completely change based on the item.
Right.
So what I'm hoping to do, what I'm hoping this ontology-based system does, is it kind of not only stores the information about Urshifu, but it also kind of stores the ability. It also kind of has the ability to decide some of those extra details on its
Mm-hmm.
own through reading, the items, through reading the moves, through reading the EVs,
Right.
just any detail. Yeah.
And so, would that look like? What would that look like? Your ideal situation. What would that look like in layman terms to somebody that, for example, um, you have tools like, the random Pokemon generator or something. Like somebody who has no idea how
hmm
something like that works. They just want to show up and use it. So for somebody listening, what would that mean for the average Joe, and how would that benefit them?
Okay. So currently the software that I have written is kind of, I did like a rapid prototype. There's still a lot of work until it gets to the point where I'm describing.
Right.
But basically, I hope to have a software tool done that you can kind of go to. You can either download it or host it on a website. Not sure what the details of that are going to be.
Right.
But you go to this, you just paste in your team, and then it'll be able to give you a map of your team, and it'll be able to give you a score.
Mm-hmm. So it's
And
it's rating the team instead of spitting the team out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then eventually, um, it's a concept in computer science that a lot of the problems that you can verify, you can solve.
Mm-hmm.
So once you get to the point where you can when you can build a good score, you can kind of change that software to then generate teams from scratch. So like say if you give it, oh, I want Bandit or Shifu, and then it can use the same information
Mm-hmm.
that it, right? So it would say, oh, I know that Bandit or Shifu is a wall breaker. I know that it's dark type and fighting type. It has trouble with Clef, with Mandibuzz,
Mm-hmm.
and then it can pair it up with, whatever good offensive partner,
Mm-hmm.
and then it can give you, on top of the offensive presence, it can give you a good defensive core. So that's the final form. That's gonna be like, once it gets to that point, I'll have succeeded, and I think that I'll have made my life's contribution to the
Right.
Pokemon community.
Right. I've been still trying to do that to this day, but yeah. Every time I think I'm done. I've written a book. I'm done with you guys. Nope. Learn something else. God damn it, I'm back. No,
Yup.
that's like super insane, and I want you to continue, but I just want to, like, that is because I actually get. I'm working on something currently, which would be a team building masterclass of sorts. Um, but I'm actually, back in my highly competitive days when you're referring to the 2015 days when I used to be like heavy in tournaments and whatnot.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Team building was something that people knew me for. So I was one of the few in the space that could team build and play. Generally, it's not. Generally, it's either
Hmm.
one or the other. Um, but I enjoyed both, and from that process and doing it at the highest level possible, I noticed patterns within people, which is how things like the book came about. It's just pattern recognition
Hmm.
within myself and people at the highest level and people at the bottom, because we can't ignore that data. Um, and so,
No, absolutely not.
um, what that means for like everybody else is, okay, I was able to. At the time, I didn't know that's what I was doing, but what I've learned afterwards. But I was just essentially able to map human patterns in people playing the game and lay it out in a way where if you come in and I plug you in a way of looking at it, you don't need to. You're essentially like climbing a ladder. Like
Hmm.
it's not an if. Like it's when you, because there are other things that go into play. Like you have to factor in what the person is like, which is what I'm learning now. I'm like, oh, I assumed, just like how what you were noticing, you assume all teams are equal. um, I assume
Hmm.
that process assumes that everyone is coming into the funnel in a way of looking at it equal. But what I'm learning is, oh, there are a lot of
Hmm.
psychological factors that I have to tackle before the person even starts in the funnel. Um, which is why I've shifted
Yeah.
more towards the mindset stuff. And so, back to the team building
Hmm.
thing, what you're suggesting now is like solving, like, the one of the biggest barriers when people come in is like, where do I start kind of thing, team building wise. And newer players tend to gravitate towards team building. um, it's fun and
Hmm.
it's cool to see whatever your favorite Pokemon is or whatever your creation is go out into what I consider the market or the battlefield, or you're essentially contending against
Hmm.
other people's creations. And it'd be like those, you remember those little battle bots things that I don't know if they still exist, but you'd create
I
your
don't I
bot,
don't know either, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
right? And you create your bot, and your bot may
Yeah.
have lasers and Lord knows what. And so for your bot to crumble somebody else's, there's something exhilarating about that, which is why I think Pokemon lasts so long, because you can create your own EVs to the, like literally create your own little monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so if there's a way in the upcoming, foreseeable future that a person can come and like, okay, I'm new or I'm not new, but team building isn't my strength. I can then go and potentially even learn from the machine how to construct a proper team from inserting a ton of inputs and like noticing the patterns that it spits out. You're like, huh, I noticed when I put in blank and I
Yeah.
asked for, say, offense, like say, because that's another thing, right? And I'm curious to hear how this is gonna be factored in. But let's say you put Urshifu, but then you have other categories where it
Mm-hmm.
says Urshifu offense, Urshifu balance. You know that also
Mm-hmm.
factors in. We have to have um, a fixed definition for what balance looks like. Have it spit that out, and then
Yeah.
all these things. So I say that to say, like, it's insane to think that we may be moving to a point where that barrier for entry is another thing that's removed.
Yeah. And then it's really a complicated, may or may not be the right word for what I'm trying to describe, but um team building is a very, like, there's a lot of concepts in team building,
Mm-hmm.
especially for newer players, that are just so daunting, and but they're more intuitive than you'd think, right?
Right.
Like the concept of sweepers, wall breakers, and pivots, which currently my tool uses. Like those are the three main categories of offensive Pokemon
Mm-hmm.
in my tool. And then so just from observing like a game or two, you realize that, oh, like games usually end with um when the game gets to a point where one team has a Pokemon that's faster than everything else on the opponent's team, and it can just finish off every Pokemon that they have left. So like you already know what a sweeper is. You just kind of then you kind of get caught in the in kind of defining the concept to
Mm-hmm.
yourself, where like you need, oh, does a sweeper need a scarf? Not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Does a sweeper need to have a speed boosting move? Like is bulk up Zero Aura not a sweeper because it can't boost its speed? Well, not really. And then these are just the kind of things, these kind of semantic
Right.
problems that kind of, like, this is where new I at least from my experience, on my long Pokemon journey,
Mm-hmm.
and also the experience that I've seen from speaking to other people, that like it's those kind of situations that trip people up. And then that's kind of what I wanted to drill down, and I wanted to say, you know what? If I make a team builder, or just the team checker, which I currently have in a basic form, like as it
Mm-hmm.
currently stands, like I want to drill down and fix that problem. Like that's the problem that I want it to fix. But man, does that require a lot of like thinking
Mm-hmm.
beforehand, because like um this doesn't have like AI in the traditional sense where it literally learns. This tool has AI in that it takes the concepts that you give it and it applies them to the new data that you're feeding through it.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of needed to think through, oh, what exactly do I consider a sweeper? And then I needed to think about like some of the edge cases, like, oh, what's the what don't I consider a sweeper, right? Like, what's the fastest Pokemon that I consider not
Interesting.
like an end game win condition? And then you get into like a really weird point where you have to draw these lines somewhere, which is part of why I'm also incredibly grateful to be able to talk to you
Mm-hmm.
and to just kind of engage with the community, because this is something that, I've kind of done a proof of concept using my own experience and my own intuitions, but
Mm-hmm.
like, we have a community, and then these definitions can only get stronger the more um the more different people's experiences we bring into them.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, luckily, because whenever I hear, of things like that, because I do, one-on-one coaching, and it's kind of crazy to think, because a lot of, the battling side of teaching came from realizing some of what you're describing, where it's like you may have a concept of sweeping, but then somebody else, you know, has slightly different
Hmm.
understandings
Yeah,
of
like
what that means. And then you have to translate, and then at that moment you just, well, who determines who, who's is correct? Um, that
hmm
is that is actually something that I have a very strong. I'm very good at clarifying what matters. One, partly because of just doing this for so long and doing it at the highest level, which I think are two very important. The experience, but not just like I've been playing, but I've
hmm
never, broken through 1100, because that's a different conversation. But also being around the best of the best in for extended periods of time, and being one. And
hmm
so that's actually not very hard to do. What I'm more concerned about is, so you said your current things, like, so for example, there may be a dichotomy in your head depending on how far along you've thought this through, and it might not be relevant for the
hmm
actual program, but let's say, just put it this way. So in a team builder, I notice people may think of it as
hmm
cores, or like when I'm teaching somebody, I generally start with core building, and
hmm
then kind of dissolve that as I go, because core building is not necessary, but I think it's a necessary skill to know in the beginning. Um, a good example is yesterday, me and my girl went to a salsa class, and I sucked.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, really sucked, and she was good. She got it right away. But in the beginning, we had to do this step thing, right? We had to, like, right foot, left foot to the,
Hmm.
this back and forth step. But it was very simple. But my brain
Yeah. Hmm.
would not, because I had to say, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and like end your foot at a particular part. And if you were to
hmm
watch somebody do it, okay, that seems simple as hell. But when you're trying to count, you're trying to step, you're trying to do this, and then you add a side step, oh yeah, you're done for. At least I know I was. And so
Yeah.
it was bad. And the reason I say that is, there's gonna come a point where I won't think about, I won't be as rigid in my movements,
Right.
because I've
Where you're
mastered the
not
foundation.
thinking.
Right,
Hmm. Yeah, like you're not thinking about each individual step as you're making it.
right. And the
Right.
importance of that is, then I
Hmm.
can break the rule and still, quote unquote,
hmm
make it work, because now I understand why the rule is there, and that's why rules are saying rules are made to be broken. Kind of yes and no, but that foundation is important. And so bringing it back to Pokemon, three things I generally teach players. In the beginning, there are three actions in Pokemon on the battling side you can take. Attacking, defending, and switching. That's it, right? Now, I have to make sure a player knows how to do each if I were to scale each. Can you attack at the right place at the right time at a 9 or 8 out of 10 level? You know what I mean? Like, is that a skill that you developed? Okay, I know when to do that. Okay, if you're 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, let's move to defending, right? And then that's how I'd gradually. And so when they get those things down pat, then it goes into a point where I can teach them something a little more complex than like that, like game planning and whatnot. But if you, and this is something that I do realize, it's kind of a hindrance of having the YouTube channel, is that people from all levels of play watch me, and so they see what I'm doing where I am and try to mimic it without really knowing where they are. And so maybe they're not supposed to be trying to make a game plan because they don't know they haven't mastered the three basic actions yet. And so with the team building thing, pivots, things like those aren't the most fundamental. Like, there's something even below that's more fundamental than that, which is why, like, you may start with, in Pokemon, how do you win? Have a game plan. Most people would say that, but that's half true. There's things even below that you need to do, but it's so you're unconsciously competent at it, so you don't realize how much unless you try to teach it to somebody who's never done any of that, and they're like, game plan,
right?
What do I do versus this? You're like, you just switch, and then it hits you. He doesn't know that he can switch. And so then you got to boil it down even further. So I'd have to maybe, again, I don't know if it's necessary, but like, I'd have to sit down and like really dive into what it would take to create a team, assuming a person didn't know anything, because the first step is always, what are you trying to accomplish, not necessarily the roles. And so I don't know if the AI would account for, well, am I trying to stall, things like that. Am I trying to, and stall in translated in a non-Pokemon sense is creating a team that enables you to be undefeatable. So Stall's goal is not to beat you, it's to be undefeatable. And so because there are finite things in Pokemon like PP, and then you add in passive things like status and hazards, they're like, okay, I don't care if I don't beat you, but you can't beat me. And so I'm going to sit here.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure that you don't have enough turns. Yeah.
You don't have enough PP. You can't switch enough. You can't. I'm going to toxic you, so you can't. So, like, before you know it, that's why people get so frustrated, and stall players probably get the angriest PMs on Showdown, is because they're like, this is from a normal, like, person's perspective, is like, you're being a coward. It would be like, I don't know, in other games where you camp. I know that's a concept, but it's just another tactic like anything else. And so for offensive style, the goal is to beat you before you beat me. I don't care how frail my Pokemon is. As long as I don't care if I lose all 5 and I just sweep you with the last one. And so offensive players and
Mm-hmm.
style of teams will lean to screens. Okay, I'll sack the first one, and everything is a means to an
Mm-hmm.
end. Like, okay, I'll get up the screens. My Magearna sets
Yeah.
up. Okay, can't sweep you with that one, but I broke through 3. Send out Blaziken. Can't sweep you with that one, but you only have 1 mon left. Let me send out my whatever other my Pheromosa. And so they'll just go
Mm-hmm.
boom, 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 boom until I win. And so people, especially newer players, lean to that because it feels simpler.
Mm-hmm.
But like stuff like that is even more foundational than before you even start the process. So what do you think would be the
Yeah.
approach to that? Because I don't understand coding and all of that.
So off the top of my head, that was one of the areas that I wanted to have integrated
Mm-hmm.
into the system. In the current prototype, it kind of fell through because I was having a little bit that since it's not generating teams,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like it's super relevant in the use cases, but it's in the use cases that I was testing it under.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely when it goes to the point where I'm releasing it to the community, absolutely that's something that I want to have taken care of. And the way that I intended was to either have it infer based on just the general structure of your team, or to just have you
Input it
have the
before.
user
Okay.
have the user input it before, where like in certain situations I was noticing, like if you have 5 Pokemon that are classified as offensive, which would be like, I think I defined it as having like, you have to have fewer than like 40 total EVs in HP defense and special defense,
Mm-hmm.
and then you need to have at least a certain number of EVs in attack special attack
Mm-hmm.
and speed. So like I kind of noticed the pattern that if you have like more than 4, your team is hyper offense like 80% of the time plus.
Mm-hmm.
If you have 1 or fewer, your team is stall like 80+% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like the issue, those two are the extremes, and they're definitely the easiest
Right.
to classify. The issue kind of becomes like balance versus bulky offense. Like that's such like a nuanced
Mm-hmm.
distinction that it's a weird. It felt weird for me to be able to choose between the two, like even though you kind of grasp it intuitively, putting it down, like writing out a definition
Mm-hmm.
for each of them, like that you can verify um, automatically,
Mm-hmm.
was very difficult. So like depending on how those steps go,
Mm-hmm.
it'll either be inferred, or the user can just have like a checkbox, like a drop down menu, like
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is my stall team, this is my hyper offense team, or here's Urshifu, build me a bulky offense team
Right. Right.
around it. So either way, I think like the user inputted, like the drop down menu isn't that much more work for the user. So I figure like
It's possible to.
neither of those, yeah,
Mm.
neither of those is going to be too much to ask.
Okay. Well, that's actually a good. Well, so with the balance, kind of just to go back a bit, that's just something that there
Mhm.
is no. You use the word verifiable. there is no way to verify that,
Mm-hmm.
because the biggest thing, and it's kind of the case where you see suspect laddering or bans and things of that nature. Um, when the majority in just anything you do, there's gonna be fewer people at the top, right? But you also still gotta
Mm-hmm.
respect the fact that they likely know more and have better results than those who are not at the top. Otherwise, they wouldn't be at the top. And where that gets wonky is when you have the majority wanting a say without maybe enough context. And so, what the majority opinion on a thing may be actually, like, if you were to break it down in the most technical sense, maybe factually incorrect, right? So, let's use a mon like
Mm-hmm.
Pheromosa just got banned, right? Let's say that the majority,
Yeah.
meaning, let's say if we were looking at it as a pyramid, let's say the bottom
Mm-hmm.
60% of people say Pheromosa wasn't broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the top,
Right.
maybe let's say the top 20, and let's say in the middle it's kind of mixed, right? Let's say the top 20 say yes, the bottom 60
Mm-hmm.
say no, and the middle it's kind of like, okay, yes and no, yes and no. um,
Mm-hmm.
with that, it's interesting because you don't want to ignore the mass player base, which is kind of what the case was with Isle of
Mm-hmm.
Armor, um, where the metagame you could consider balanced, but the it wasn't entertaining. And so, if the goal of the top players who don't ladder that often is to have a balanced metagame,
Mm-hmm.
because they're thinking from the standpoint of, well, for the few tour games I play, I don't want to lose to McGear in every
Mm-hmm.
game, or because they're like, well, that doesn't take a lot of skill because it's almost impossible to tell what set that thing is going to be. And so it skews
Mm-hmm.
the skill part of the metagame a bit. And it's like, okay, let's address the skill part. And so you satisfied because
Mm-hmm.
you play one game a week, and then you have the majority who are the ones that
Mm-hmm.
make all this possible because they're the ones playing on the ladder frequently. They're bored half to death
Mm-hmm.
because they're playing, a bunch of Rillaboom every game. Again, referencing Isle of Armor
Yeah.
because I think that was at a very despised
Yeah.
time. And they're tired.
That was rough. That was rough.
But like Rillaboom, you get tired of Zero Rilla, like the same. And so it got to a point where it was like a monopoly. Like you could predict out of 10 Pokemon in the meta,
Mm-hmm.
every team is gonna have at least 4 of them. And so, from an
Oh
entertainment
yeah, definitely.
standpoint, that's not great for the mass. And so that's kind of that scale of like, okay, do we lean more towards competitive, or do we lean more towards enjoyment and finding that healthy balance? And so, kind of back to the definitions, you'll never find
Mm-hmm.
a consensus. But what I am good at is, so like, if you really wanted something just for the sake of the I know I've been doing this long enough and have the most experience on Earth when it comes to like explanations, and so I'm
Mm-hmm.
very good at explaining something in a way where it's not incorrect. It might not be
Right.
like the perfect
Mm-hmm.
definition, but it definitely won't be incorrect. And so it'll be broad
Mm-hmm.
enough to
Which
where,
which in
go ahead.
Mhm. Oh no, that in some of these contexts, right? Like back a few minutes ago when we were talking about, like the what is a sweeper necessarily,
Hmm.
like there, like you don't need to be correct. You just need to not be
Right.
incorrect. So you're so that's definitely coming at it from, I think, the absolute right perspective.
Which I am the most, like, they used to make jokes. I don't know if you remember the era when they used to make old jokes about me. Um, then
Yeah.
everybody used to spam old man jam and all that stuff. That came from my lack
Yeah.
of technical ability. Like that's really where that stemmed from. It has nothing to do with my age, because Joey's older than me, but you know, and I'm not much older than Blunder, but there used to always be that
Mhm.
kind of, and I think also how I communicate. At the time, no one was really talking about competitive minds in like such a in detailed kind of style, and so
Mhm.
that with
Yeah.
all that just lent, like, so I'm not technical in any, like, I have no idea, but what I can offer to you is I know I'm good at explanation and making something understandable to just about anybody. So translation, I always use the term translation. So
Mhm.
if you need translations for your process, and you list out, okay, I need hard definitions for these, that would be very easy. Like
Mhm.
but to say, for example, using sweeper, if I were to come off at the top of my head for like a hard in the sand kind of definition, it may look something like
Mhm.
um a Pokemon that has the capability of defeating the opposing, or the remaining, I'll use the word remaining Pokemon
Mhm.
without, let's just use for a broad term, like without opposition. But the thing is, sweepers, like, let's say you put Blaziken as a sweeper. If Blaziken is facing a team
Mhm.
of Hippowdon, it's not, but for the sake of
Yeah.
like just a hard in the same, where it's like, if I read that, okay, so I need to, because it's not necessarily about
Mhm.
speed, it's more about, can I be
Mhm.
stopped, because you have Pokemon
Right.
that aren't fast, like SD Scizor or Mega Scizor, that don't bank
Mhm.
on speed,
Yeah.
but he was a very dangerous sweeper because he'd bullet punch you. So it's more
Mhm.
about, can it be stopped or opposed by what's remaining. And so
Mhm.
if you're facing a team of Clefable and that Scizor SDs, it's sweeping you. Alternatively,
Yeah.
Clefable can also sweep you, even though it's in a weird mixture category, but I wouldn't classify it
Mhm.
as a sweeper by definition, but it can sweep you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like you end up in a lot of these situations where the the process of playing an individual game, right? Like you can get swept by a clef,
Right.
as you just said, right? Like that thing gets up two calm minds, you don't have you don't have a good switch in, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
But I conceptually, I think going into a game saying clef is my sweeper is probably not
Right. It's not the right
right.
categorization of
Mhm.
clef, even if it's a sweeper set.
Right. Well, if it's a sweeper set, that probably changes. But like, if you have just a standard Calm Mind Clefable, like before, but see, like this is the discussion. Like this is what I'm talking about. Where like this is maybe some of my where some of my personal bias is coming in
Mm-hmm.
to my definitions. Where like if I have a clef on my team where it's max HP and it has Calm Mind, Soft Boiled, Moonblast, Flamethrower.
Mm-hmm.
Before team preview, I don't think that's my sweeper. Like that's gonna be one of my more like Plan C, Plan D type win conditions.
Right.
And like I guess just figuring out these distinctions, and then again I defer to you, but figuring out these distinctions between different people's intuitions is kind of at the root of like what my tool wants to solve, and then that's at the root of just everything, all the discussions
Right.
that are had on these topics.
Well, it's actually not. It's not as intuitive as you think. So, like somebody may say, well, because what we're looking for is a definition that can't be refuted. It doesn't necessarily need to.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say how I define sweeper, and we're like, well, clef can technically, it may be able to fit in the definition, but that doesn't mean that there's no mind that you think of that's a sweeper that doesn't fit in the definition. You know what I'm saying? And so let's say you use
Right.
let's say you have what you think of as a sweeper, for example, Dragon Dance, Dragonite or something. Based on the definition we've given, you can't not fit. It fits. The scissor fits. Everything fits. Now you may have a Swords Dance Tangrowth that most people would not intuitively, that face value, because you can't tell. That's another thing, you can't tell what the opponent has unless they show it. So there is an element of guessing in Pokemon, or assuming, let's just say. And so with that person in their head may think of Tangrowth as a sweeper. But here's how I think it is a better way to kind of avoid that issue: is there are more categories than you may originally assume that there are. Like, so in the term of a sweeper, pivot, they're probably like more tight, what's the word I'm looking for, a very tiny category that maybe it's so tiny that only a few Pokemon can really fit that but it's important for understanding how this all comes together, because no matter what a Pokemon does in a game, its role is defined by its environment. And so we can't its role and its definition changes based on where it's placed. So if Tangrowth, for example, using the DLCs are a great example. Throughout the DLC era, different things get released. And so if we're taking the beginning of Sword and Shield, where the metagame, the speed tiers changed dramatically. And so coming off X and Y, Gen 7, if you played that, the average speed tier for what was considered fast was,
that was insane.
Yeah, like we're talking, three, I usually remember by numbers, but like 370 plus, 370 something plus, like Torrent speed, Alakazam speed tier, and ranging up to Cocos, and then going into Scarfers and things of that nature. So with the new Sword and Shield and the removal, fast is now considered, if you're 317, you're fast. Galarian Darmanitan speed tier, you're fast. Excadrill, you're fast. And so fast isn't a fixed term, it's based on the environment. So if we take that, Excadrill or Galarian Darmanitan, if just taken and put in the Gen 7, may not be considered a sweeper or even uber, because it's a different environment, even though nothing else changed about the Pokemon. And so now we're contending with Megas, a ton of priority, Mega Scizor being a thing, like everything else remaining the same, but now we have things that really harm that. No heavy duty boots, so hazards are still like, so there are a lot of factors that go into that. And so then take that back to the current era. If Clefable, even if it can sweep, I don't think it ever goes in the category of a sweeper because its environment doesn't lend to that definition, and because it's in 99% of the games, it's not going to be faster than everything, and in 99% of the games, the opponent's going to have something or at least two things that will stop your CM Clef. If you run into the one or two people that don't have anything, sure, you sweep, but it doesn't fit the definition of a sweeper because generally you're not going to, based on the metagame, no matter what you do.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Hopefully for the audience, because I'm also like trying to speak in a simplistic, understandable way. Trying to consider there might be a person listening that has no idea, has never been past 1200 and they're new, and then you have the more advanced person. So I always try to speak in a way where everybody understands and no one feels overwhelmed and confused.
And then, so if I can go off of kind of just the concept that you were just bringing up about the metagame shifts, like that's also something that this tool should take into account. Like it should. So what it does currently is it takes the OU, and then I think I include UU and maybe some RU Pokemon just as kind of its like
pool,
its collection, as its pool, and then basically it kind of builds itself up off of the tier lists. So, and then I haven't gotten it to the point, and then I'm gonna need to talk to a bunch of people that are smarter than me in like software development and software engineering and like versioning to get it so every month when
the usage, I was gonna ask
when
you
the
that.
tier when the usage shuffles come out, like that it updates the whole thing, and then it recomputes, and then let's say, and then in case of bans, right, like from yesterday to today, like if the tool had a role that was specifically for Pheromosa switch-ins, right, where like you needed, it would penalize your score if you didn't have a Pokemon that could switch into Pheromosa. Like from yesterday to today, that category is useless now. So it's kind of just doing some sort of versioning that just kind of keeps up to date with some of the meta shifts and just the pool of Pokemon that it's working with, because things just change really fast, and then what you need in a team changes just as fast, right? Like there are constants like having something that like dark resists, ground resists, water resists. Those have been, although water resists less so now than usual, but there's still a bunch of rain teams. But like,
until Greninja raises ugly head again.
Man, am I ready? but yeah, like those concepts have been pretty consistent. But as far as like every team needing like two dark, like one solid dark resist or two like softer dark resists, that was like you need those in order to counter a Shifu. And then you'd prefer that they have a fairy or a flying type attack, and those concepts are new because like fairy and flying type attacks wouldn't beat a Bisharp last gen,
Right.
right? Like your dark switching had to have different moves, and then just concepts like that are evolving with the tier shifts and with the metagame. Like I have to make sure that the final stage of this tool also takes those into account.
No, it's actually, and even just listening to this, it's kind of like that thing of, you know, in trying to program, and I'm assuming this is what happened. I mean, it could not, but it could not have been the case. But in attempting to program AI, it just shows you the power of the brain more and more. So it really just gives you more, you're in more awe of just how powerful that piece of meat between your ears is, because you just it gives you the realization of how much you're processing and dealing with without realizing it in so many different areas of your life. And it's nuts. It's truly,
It really is.
like, because it's we're like nerding out at this point, but it and this is just one domain. This is Pokemon, right? Like, all the things.
Right.
I'm sure that if somebody were to try to do some kind of something outside of team building and some other, part of the game, would be super complex as well. And so with that, actually, part of the reason why I was so excited to hear about this is I'm in the works of creating a website, right? And I know I've been, my viewers are probably like, "Damn, you've been saying that for a year now," which is true. But listen, hear me out. Initially, the website was supposed to be my website, like a Jamvad kind of thing. All my, all the relevant stuff that I like to share with new people or whatever, just boom. And it wasn't until, circumstances such and such, and then it hit me like, no. Instead, I'm going to go in the direction of, I want to create something that incorporates like, essentially connects every corner of competitive Pokemon and puts them under one roof. And so it's going to be like a competitive Pokemon mecca. So we're talking Go, VGC, Draft, Smogon. I think TCG will be a relevant thing to add as well. It's a big enough community. And it will act as a focus strictly on competitive Pokemon. But it'll act as a training ground, amongst other things, for, let's say right now you're like, okay, I've never done competitive Pokemon Go. And so even though you know a lot about this section of the game, the idea of learning what the hell a power energy is or whatever they have in Go can be like, oh my god, like, I'm gonna have to like start back from scratch, and I don't even know where to start. And that's the main thing. And I don't even know where to start. And to be honest, if you were to, as much as you know about singles, if you were to have somebody, hey, I want to learn about singles, where do I start? You might not have an answer for that. You know what I mean? As much as you know. And so my goal is to have that website solve that, where do I start, with one place. And it'll have like courses, like literal, like, but put it in a simplistic way. It's easy to navigate, and it just removes the daunting feeling that you get when you try to oh my god, I'm gonna have to learn, that overwhelmed feeling. It removes that as much as possible to just completely chop down the barrier of entry for competitive minds. And so what you'll then see is a lot of like, a lot of people know about Pokemon in their niche, but they don't cross because they're like, for VGC I'm gonna have to learn all this stuff. But if there's a simple way where you can just run through a quick course, short videos to the point, you're like, okay. And so it's digestible.
Yeah.
And so where your tool comes into play is like, because you were saying you don't know if you're going to have it as a software download or just, it could be both. But that would be something that
it could be.
Huh?
It could be either. Like that's in the future. I can't say.
Right. But what I mean to say is the and I don't know when that website is gonna come out. The beta obviously will come out earlier, ideally mid next year, latest. But who
Mm-hmm.
knows? Because I want like solid people who actually give a damn. Like I can tell that you actually like this is just fun for you. It's not. It's not.
Yeah.
You're not trying to get like it's genuinely like if all bills were paid and like everything, I'd literally work on this and just because it's just intriguing for its own sake. And so
Yeah. Same here.
no, I was referring to you. Like that's how it sounds when I hear you talk about it. Like it's like
Mhm.
it's not. I'm not doing this for anything other than the fact that I like doing it. Um, and those are people I really like to work with in their craft. And so for the website, I'm aiming to have it be like it's not just some one is gonna be gorgeous. Like I like aesthetics, and so I don't want it to look like the
Mhm.
1930s. Like I want it to actually look really like visually nice. I like how the Pokemon website aesthetic is. It's
Mhm.
very like colorful, and so it's gonna be similar to that, but easier to navigate. Um, and so
Mhm.
for your tool, that could be like one of the core like pieces that addresses the team building aspect, because that's a whole other thing. Like teaching you how to play is one, but team
Mhm.
building within that type of format is another. Um, and so
Mhm.
whether that be because you said you sound like you already have your kind of circle of people that you consult, but in listening to this, I'm sure there are several people who would be like, "Yo, bro, like if you need any help or you want like someone to cross reference as we put this thing together, or I know
Mhm.
I've been doing what you're trying to do, but obviously in different areas for 10 years. I love
Mhm.
Pokemon too, and I'd love to join you on the project. Like the power of this is my connections don't stop just within my sub base, but I know a lot of people, and so it can extend. And so if that were something that you wanted, because I definitely want this incorporated into the actual website because it just fits with the theme of breaking down the barrier to entry. And so like I'm really excited to
Yeah.
see you know if we have to test and learn, and maybe even have a team of people whose core focus is like I love doing this, and even ideally I want to get to the point where I can just everybody who helps the website function, I want to have them paid.
Mhm.
Like if you're the web developer, if you're an article writer,
Mhm.
if you're whatever, if you manage tournaments, I want it to be
Mhm.
running like a literal business in a way of thinking about it, but I want people who love
Mhm.
doing what they do to be able to actually earn money, depending on how big it grows, potentially just earn full time their living off just being a Pokemon journalist type shit, or creating a magazine every month that comes out, and
Mhm.
have a magazine team or an animation team. Or in your case,
Yeah.
they keep the team builders for all the different formats updated, and like
Yeah.
that's just the vision. But like I am super on board. I
Hey,
say all that to say
hopefully it gets there.
it can. We have a
Hopefully it gets
it's
there.
a $100 billion franchise. I think we have the
Yeah. Yeah.
and Pokemon Go
Yeah. Cause
alone's audience is
Mhm.
is massive. So yeah,
Yeah. Cause man, like getting in the year 2020, getting one Pokemon research paper into an AI conference is a good a
yeah,
good accomplishment.
yeah.
Man, like if this gets to where you and I think it can, like I'm gonna be getting tenured positions in a
Facts,
university based on my founding research
facts.
in in competitive Pokemon, and man, that's a cool
Yeah,
scenario to think
Nah,
about.
that's that. Like, can you imagine? Like, it's interesting because you'd be the like a literal, and it's sometimes I don't think about it in this way, but sometimes I have to remind myself. I'm like, if you do, you're literally the first in history. It's not the first on the Discord, first on
Mhm.
like you'd literally be like a the guy that like even had the idea or attempted the thing. You'd be the
Mhm.
Tesla, not like the company Tesla, but like the actual guy, or the
Yeah.
Einstein of this thing. And so with the book, nobody has ever attempted
Mhm.
anything like that. And so the response I got from that, I'm like, holy fucking shit. And so now, just to kind of give a little insight to you or the audience and the audience, um,
Mhm.
the Academy Discord has taught me so much because my fascination is human behaviors. And so just like how yours is, more so the
Mhm.
technical side of things and the programming and all that. Mine is just human psychology,
Mhm.
behavior, all of that stuff is what I'm more interested in. So when I observe behavior and I'm like, why does this person do this and this person doesn't do it? And then I just map the patterns, and then when I see a pattern, I go and I research the psychological literature and I study it, read a ton of books.
Mhm.
I bought like 20 fucking books
Mhm.
on this. And so I go read it, and then I come back and I may insert some of the principles from what I've read into trying to help
Mhm.
somebody, and then I'll see their results skyrocket like at 10 times the speed that this person would
Mhm.
that doesn't know this. And so then okay, so you're 1600, try this
Mhm.
thing. Not an actual try, picking a better lead. I'm talking about
Mhm.
like try to view
Yeah,
each
like this
game
this attitude change.
right. And then boom, holy shit,
Mhm.
bro. In a day, I jumped 300 points. And so I'm like, holy shit. And so getting obsessed with that,
Nice.
I'm like, yo, this isn't. Brought me to the realization is like, this isn't Pokemon psychology. And people aren't Pokemon players. They're players. They're people playing Pokemon. And so
Mhm.
they go into, like, everybody that goes into anything. Well, I'm more trying to pioneer this in the gaming space
Mhm.
where we can have like actual gaming psychology. Now, it's not gaming psychology, just like it's not, you have sports psychology, which is kind of sports
Mhm.
psychology, but it's really not. It's really psychology, and then they just happen to be playing
Mhm.
sports. But moving that into the gaming scene, because one, that's untapped. Like, nobody's like
Yeah.
trying to do anything like this anywhere. And so if we can get
Mhm.
to the point where there's a way to there's a such deep like either whether it be a book or a course or whatever, to where any competitive
Mhm.
gamer can go through it and see results no matter what game they're playing, because we're now addressing the person, not necessarily their medium. um, and so if we
Mhm.
can get to the point where, in 2 years, the world champ of whatever the hell that's not Pokemon is like, yeah, it's like, how did you see such a rapid improvement? And they're like, yeah, I read this book on like gaming psychology, and then it really helped me from that. And then boom, gaming psychology. Everybody's like, yo, where the fuck? Who's the author? Blah blah blah. And then
Everyone types it into Google, and then boom, it's over. It's over. The internet works in fun
right,
ways.
right. But this is the doing that book really opened my eyes to how many markets and how many, because gaming is still at this level of a platform is very new. And so you want to think about it like, imagine the
Yeah.
first basketball players, you know who if he told his parents
Yeah.
he's trying to You know, if you don't go and get a job, like, you know what I mean? And so now we're moving into a
Yeah, like I'm going pro.
right.
You're doing what now?
You're being disowned as my son is what you're doing. Uh, and they're like, what? But now people will move states. They'll like for a shot, not even guaranteed, just for a shot
Hmm.
of getting into a good college or getting into the NBA or any other sport for that matter. Because I believe Messi, I don't know if you know
Yeah.
too much about soccer, but I think his parents moved him
Yeah.
from Argentina to Spain to for that. Don't quote me on that,
Damn.
but I mean he's became one of the best players of all time, so it clearly,
Hmm.
worked.
Yeah.
But that was
Clearly,
inconceivable.
whatever happened worked.
It really did.
Hmm.
But that was inconceivable at a point. And I say all that to say, like, with your project right now, trust me, dude, like again, whatever help and as far as the definition side, that's an expertise of mine. But even beyond that, if you want any
Hmm.
extra, um, I think this could really move you in a direction that you don't yet see, and then people are reaching out. You think it's just, oh
Hmm.
yeah, I'm tenured at a university because of my research, but it could be, and it will be, and extend far deeper than what you can currently see, and
Yeah.
it's exciting. That's the word I'd use. It's exciting stuff.
Hmm.
It's exciting, but
Yeah. And that's part of the reason I was so excited to come on, because I definitely, I had the idea, I had the specific situation where the combination of the class that I was taking
mm-hmm,
causing me to think in a new way,
mm-hmm,
plus my previous experience with Pokemon, all of that coming together.
mm-hmm.
But I still have weaknesses and just stuff that I know that other people know better than me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think coming on this platform to just kind of talk about it and then just let as many people hear it as I can, and then see what other people's take is on what I'm doing, and then just the concept of automated team building in general, and then kind of just integrate people's knowledge, and then all the knowledge that they're willing to offer, and all of the help and expertise that they're willing to offer. Like it'll only make the tool better, which will only benefit the community more.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
it's phenomenal.
Yeah, to leave a stamp like that to say like, yo, because as I said, the space is still relatively new. So we're losing a lot of people just on barrier of entry issues. And that website is going to fix that, and your tool is going to
Hmm.
help fix that. And so we're talking like your tool could be the equivalent of a showdown in the team building space, you know. And I mean that in the sense of
Yeah, yeah,
the ability to generate a team in seconds, like that is
yeah, yeah. Definitely less than a minute.
that's nuts. You know what I mean? Like that is a person
Hmm.
goes in, clicks. Because I don't know if you know of Pyrotaz, but he has something similar-ish. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah, that was one of the case studies that I had done, actually.
Okay.
Like, for my paper, I compared my tool versus or I compared three teams generated automatically versus one team that I think I stole from a video of yours. I'm not 100%
I
remembering
wouldn't be
right
shocked.
now.
Yeah.
It was Urshifu and Rhyperior, I think,
Yeah, it might have been.
was the. But basically, I compared those teams, like I scored them based on my tool, and then I compared how they did on the ladder. And I think Pyrotaz was one of the automated automated team builders that I had checked, and that one was the best that I had found.
Right.
But it was still, like, like you could tell that it was just pulling Pokemon like out of a database.
Right.
So like you have the database of like of Pokemon with their viable sets, and then like there's a lot of deviation in team structure, and like the type weaknesses are matched up so that you don't have like 3 fire weeks on one team, all the basic stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But then like going another step and then kind of like learning the semantics and learning the strategic decision making
Mm.
part of team building is kind of what I noticed was the difference.
Yeah, it was the initial. It's definitely a stepping stone kind of thing,
Yeah,
like that may have
definitely.
been the, the like the BlackBerry or the Razor. Remember those? When those were just like
Yeah,
when those were the thing. Now we have smartphones, and you could say the
sure
iPhone
do.
1 versus the 12. Like
Mhm.
it's just taking it a step beyond.
Yeah.
And so definitely respect
Hmm.
his contribution to that space. Very, very useful too. Um, but I'm still excited to see
Absolutely, absolutely.
like where this can go. And so again, if it is a case where you'd want the assistance, because there's gonna be, if that's the case and somebody's like, yo, I want to help work with this, is that something you want to hold off on until it's the
Hmm.
relevant time, or would you like input right away? Or
Oh, input as soon as anyone can provide would be would be phenomenal for me. Like the prototyping phase is over. I finished that. I submitted the paper. It's under review. I think I'll get the results on whether it's accepted like within the next month.
mhm,
So by then I'll figure out like if it's actually going to be published.
mhm,
And the publication doesn't mean my work is over, like by no
right,
means. So any input, like if anyone hears anything that I said and was like, oh, like I know software development, I know like versioning, I know such and such thing that he seems to be like not too confident in,
mhm,
or kind of ignoring a little bit,
mhm,
like please reach out here, like I guess in the comments of this video when it's on YouTube, or in the Academy Discord, which I'm a member of.
right.
Like,
And if guys, you can just
mhm.
because if it's a ton of people, then I'll just create like one. That's what I always do. Like just create like a private group where that can be everybody of the
Okay.
similar interest can be, and it'll be like within the academy. I'll call it like, academy team builder or something, and then so that way you
Yeah.
can group as one, because they'd have to, um, because I'm thinking like how would they find your name? I guess they could just put it in the search of the academy.
Um. Yeah. And then I could make my name like Danny,
Yeah,
like researcher Danny or
yeah,
something.
yeah. That would be helpful. Like researcher
Yeah.
Danny under. That sounds like a. Even your picture looks like it could be in a like one of those
Yeah.
Pokemon professors in the games, or like the assistant or something.
Yeah. Like I'm currently already a Pokemon NPC.
Nah, this is
But
dope.
yeah. So I think, yeah, I made that change already. So you can ping me at researcher Danny in the Academy Discord.
Yeah, and if you can't find him, just shoot
Mhm.
me a PM, and then as I tally all those, we'll just put that together. But yeah, um,
Yeah,
and guys, if
absolutely.
you have any, just like uh, researcher Danny said, uh, you know, if you guys have any cool concepts, like like again, I always view just like how I added who I am to Pokemon, how he's adding he is to Pokemon. There's several different ways this can all be expressed, and so it's not whether it can be done in a Pokemon context, is whether you're willing to do it. That sounded mad motivational, but I really wasn't trying to go there. But
I'm gonna go ladder down right now, just off of hearing that.
But I do mean that in the sense, like, if you're into, because at one point I actually tried to put together stories, like actual animation, because I noticed, like, like, I'll have these like super well written from a conceptual or just like writing standpoint papers, or maybe not papers, articles, let's say, on things mentally that will help you make that shift. And then I was like, writing is cool, but that's not everybody's medium. And so I transitioned to, okay, I'll do a video. But it's also still just logic, and so the next thing I was like, people retain things very well when it's in story format, because pre-writing, pre-text, we communicated through stories. Hey Bob, what happened today, man? A lion almost killed me. That's how we communicated. Stories.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to, what does it look like? Big, green. Okay, need to stay away from that shit. Cool, thanks Bob. So I'm like, okay, what's a way I can share that in a different medium that's not as logical, so it can those who aren't as logical can understand. And so for a while I had like actual people writing stories, and like basically translating those principles in an actual story format. And so that's another way it's expressed. I ended up finding people who were voice actors and was getting stuff animated, voice acting behind it. And so like voice acting coming into Pokemon in a non obviously anime way, like with this website that's coming out, I genuinely want people's expression of themselves to be able to manifest in whatever way within our space. And so if you're an animator, I may have a team of animators that literally get paid to translate these things into ways that make sense to those coming into the community, or magazine developers. So guys, if you have anything, shoot me a PM. I'll hear your idea. It might be an On the Contrary episode, it might not, but I also can put you in touch with the relevant people that can really help speed up whatever your goal is, just like with Danny here, because I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people who want to either talk to you about it or like swap ideas or whatever. So definitely shoot me a PM. My door is always open. But yeah, anything else you want to add?
No, that's all I've got. I think we've covered a lot.
Yeah. People like these like very long form discussion-y.
Very long, in depth.
Yeah. So this will be. I need to find something mad clickbaity. Self-building team AI, like.
Whoa.
Yeah. What? This team builds itself? New technology revealed or something.
Stay tuned to the very end.
No, but
all right. So now I'm gonna recite the download link, but we're not gonna put it in the description.
Right.
I'm just gonna say it. No,
right.
Kidding.
Literally, like, you gotta pay attention. I save it right in the middle so you don't know where to go, so you don't skip to the end, kind of thing. But But yeah, man, thanks a ton for the PM. It couldn't have come at a better time, as I am currently working on some things myself. So this really kind of put an extra pep in my step as far as my excitement to do what I'm going to do. So definitely thanks for the PM.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me. It's been so great. Like, been following you and Blunder and Joey and MV, the whole crew since the summer of 2015, and and you guys mean a lot to me, and just getting this opportunity was great.
Feeling is mutual. I know a lot of people don't believe me when I say that, but like I recognize everybody in the comments. Open door policy as usual. It's literally you just PM'd me like out of the. It's not no. I'm in the Discord all the time. I talk all the time, so it's definitely always going to be an open door policy. I'm probably the easiest person to get in contact with. So if for anybody out there who, again, has their idea, literally a PM away. So thanks again. That's where we're going to wrap up this episode of On the Contrary today. Today's video is sponsored by, I'm kidding. But yeah, that's it. That's it, guys. It's sponsored by the soon-to-be Pokemon generator thingamajigger. And mark the date, guys. December 18, 2020. You were the first to hear it.
Yep.
All right, y'all. Peace.
You know it.